finally able to get all the technical issues resolved. And we have Dr. John Gray in the classroom as our teacher today. Make sure, because our algorithms are being garbled, that you share, like, follow. Make sure you let your friends know that we are going to learn a new truth about victimization. So here we go. Let me go ahead and start the recording. Let's do your part by helping us grow the classroom. Today, we're going to be talking about addiction to victimization. What? So fasten your seatbelt, because we're going to be learning new truth with Dr. John Gray. So let's get ready to dance. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, I've said this many times, and I'm going to say it again. My greatest aha moment with any teacher, well, I had a lot of them, but this was my favorite. This was life-changing, was when Dr. John Gray, relationship expert, he is the author of all the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus series, and 16 other books, if I'm still counting correctly, shared that you can become addicted to victimization. Wow, that just I had to stop. We were talking about relationships and mourning loss. And when he said that, it just completely opened my eyes to coaching people that are victimized and chronic victimizers. And so I just thought, let's dive deeper into this topic, because I believe there's a lot of people out there that feel that they got the wrong end of the stick or raw end of the deal. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so excited that Dr. John Gray is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Gray, to the classroom.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yes. Now, do you remember that moment? Here we are talking about, the loss of your wife and, healing from that, when all of a sudden this topic became we got to get you back to talk about this. So let's talk about, well, first of all, let's talk about your background, because there may be some people that don't know who you are, but maybe know the Mars, Venus connotation, the title. Share a little bit about your background. What led you to this becoming a relationship expert?
Well, I think what prepared the foundation was not my education. It was growing up with 5 brothers. So 6 guys growing up in a household. So I really understood guys. And then I became a monk when I was 19 years old, living with guys till I was 27 years old. Now, I like women, of course. As a teenager, I was very sexually active. However, during my monk years, I was a pure celibate. And that meant no masturbation, nothing. It was all about spirituality and meditation. And I'm a master of meditation, been doing it 50 years. But that was a foundation for becoming a relationship expert, ironically. because when you learn how to meditate or some practice where you go inside, you learn how to find your happiness and open your heart without depending on someone on the outside.
Mhm.
So then when I fell in love with Bonnie, and I've been a monk, I've been very happy as a monk, but my brother was bipolar and he was suffering, and meditation didn't fix that. So I left being a monk to study psychology and to help my brother. And psychology didn't help him, and drugs didn't help him. And uh, but as I studied psychology, I realized I have a talent for this. I started counseling people, and just using logic, I just said, you're constantly expecting a man to think the way you do. We just think differently, because I understood men and myself, my masculinity, we'll put it that way, in a very positive light. So I wasn't defensive when women showed up differently. You see, most of the time when arguments happen between couples, whenever there's tension, they argue, they defend their position. Well, if you feel really good about yourself, you have nothing to defend. If somebody wants to change you, kind of go, why? What's going on? What are you thinking? What's happening? And I particularly saw this in my counseling practice.
Mhm.
And my counseling practice within a year was sold out. It was long waiting lists because I was just not using what was taught in universities. They were teaching just the opposite. And I thought, this is like crazy. The emperor has no clothes. They were teaching that men and women are the same, and you should use the same therapeutic technique on a man as you would on a woman. And I'm going, this doesn't fly with me. And
Mhm.
so, the whole idea, if I could shorten it down, if you go back to the Eastern thought of meditation, Christian thought of meditation, be still and know God. The Buddha, which is to forget everything and go into nirvana state. That is a state of not thinking about problems at all. It's not thinking at all. Now, when you can do that, it raises certain hormones in the body. It increases testosterone. It lowers your stress levels. For men, when you forget all your problems, then you have nothing to lower your testosterone. When men are stressed, for example, they always have low testosterone, and forgetting your problems helps you to rebuild your testosterone. But for women, their whole thing is to talk about it. And this is what the whole foundation of talk therapy is about in the West. And psychology says, if you have a problem, talk about it. Well, that turns out to produce, when you talk about your feelings, talk about what you think, talk about your problems, talk about whatever's going on, it does produce a hormone called estrogen. And now we know biologically that estrogen lowers stress in women. It doesn't lower stress in men. Now, testosterone, if you go into meditation, it feels good for women, but it doesn't necessarily lower their stress levels. Anything that produces testosterone will make you feel good. Anything that makes you produce estrogen makes you feel good for a while.
Mhm.
But for men, when estrogen goes too high, their testosterone goes too low. And these are these needy, irritable, passive men or angry men. It turns out that everything we thought about hormones was wrong.
Mhm.
Anger is not too much testosterone. Anger is too much estrogen. Any emotion in men, negative emotion in men, is always an imbalance of hormones where he has too many female hormones and not enough masculine hormones. And for women, anytime they're stressed out, you can measure this, that when women are stressed, their estrogen levels are low, typically because they're making testosterone. So to put this in friendly behavioral terms, if you look at what behaviors stimulate estrogen, it's whenever you're dependent on someone or something for your happiness. Okay, dependence. So that's relationship. We're in a relationship right now. We're interacting, we're interdependent. But the dependent part of that is going to produce estrogen, and that's going to always lower stress for women. Now, ironically, when men are solving, or men or women are solving problems, talking, solving problems, doing things, achieving goals, sacrificing to achieve a goal, doing things you have to do, that produces testosterone that lowers stress for men. It can feel good to a woman to be successful, make money, to achieve her goals, to contribute to the world, to stand up for what's right. There's nothing wrong with that. It feels good, except that if you do that and neglect the female side of you, which is dependent on others, and feeling that's the whole purpose. We have the work world, and then we have the relationship world, and they produce different hormones. But when women went over to the work world back in the 60s, it started, they couldn't get back to the female side as much. Now some do, but basically you do. I can see it in your smile. But many women, when you go over to your male side, it's hard to get back to the female side. Just like for men, when they go to their female side, it's hard for them to get back to their male side. What would be the most dramatic example of a man going to his female side? Cocaine addiction. See, he's addicted to something on outside himself to make him happy, rather than, I'm doing this show right now. That makes me happy. I work hard. I write books. I help people. I counsel. I drive my car. I work out in the gym. That's what makes me happy. That's one source of happiness. Or I could just sit back and eat a lot of food and make me happy. So people overeat. People take cocaine. Now, one of the biggest addictions for males, which is very sad, is porn. They just sit back rather than bothering with a relationship and doing everything it takes to create a beautiful sexual experience. They just watch, they go online, and it actually produces a brain chemical called dopamine more than if you made love to your wife. So that becomes the brain gets rewired and says, I need that kind of stimulation rather than stimulation with my wife. So we opened the show, which is, this is the amazing thing for you to realize. And this was amazing to me too. It was the discovery that scientists make, is when people chronically grieve, some people never get through it. Now I'm an example of somebody who's an expert on emotional intelligence, been teaching it 50 years, and it's how to process your emotions. So when something upsets you, you always come back to feeling good. If something upsets you, you feel good. It's kind of like what people see at a loss of a loved one, for example, a big loss. That's a big stress. You grieve and you cry at the grave scene, and then you go and you chat with other people and talk for a while. Maybe tears come up, then you feel good, and you feel bad, then you feel good. You go back and forth. If you know how to go back and forth, and there's a technique for that some people naturally do and others don't. And when you go from your negative emotions to your positive emotions, you're growing pathways in your brain that reward you from going from negative emotions to positive emotions. Mm-hmm. Whatever you repeat in the brain neuroconnectors grow. There's a Nobel Prize winner with neurons in the brain that fire together, grow together. Mm-hmm. So basically, if I'm grieving, I'm feeling, oh, I miss my wife. Okay, so that's an emotion. I'm feeling that emotion. Those neurons are being excited. And then I'm able to go through my sadness and experience my fear. I'll never be happy again. I feel my guilt. I wish I'd been a better husband. I feel my frustration. I can't bring her back. I feel my anger that the medical system failed her. And then I would feel my disappointment, for example. I'm disappointed that she's not in my life. Well, suddenly I've created a pathway back to disappointment, and disappointment is just, I didn't get what I wanted. So now I'm back to feeling what I want. And what I want is love in my life. I can't bring her back, but what I want is love in my life. So what you do is you process your emotion, and it brings you back to your original desire in the first place, which is, I want love. Mm-hmm. Now that is something which most people have never heard of, although it's the foundation of psychology, Western psychology, which is what Freud talked about. Not that I agree with all Freud's ideas, but he's a brilliant man. And what he pointed out is that when you attach to someone, you love someone, you attach to them, a mechanism happens in the brain, and it's a beautiful mechanism. And we all need love, to be appreciated, to be trusted, to be respected, to be admired, to feel someone cares for you, someone backs you up. These are all things we need as human beings to develop psychologically. Now, I meet someone and they give me that, my brain will call that, all those things, love. So I find someone and they love me. My brain goes, yay, I now have what I need. It's like you just won the lottery. Once I have what I need, my brain goes, okay, I no longer need love, I need you. That's called a need integrate. So I no longer need love. My brain forgets that it needs love, it needs you. And now when you're not there, it feels like, oh, I can never get the love I need. So it takes a while for the brain to realize it can get the love it needs. So you have to expose yourself in situations where people are kind to you and friendly to you and interacting with you. At the same time, these emotions of loss come up. You have to feel them. And then each time you feel them, bring them back to positive feelings. You have to always bring it back to positive feelings. If you feel those negative emotions and you don't bring them back to positive feelings, then your brain basically produces huge amounts of dopamine, and you feel really good. Even though you don't feel good, your brain thinks, oh, this is great. This is an addiction. And because it produces high dopamine. Dopamine is pleasure in the brain. You might not think of it as pleasure always, but aliveness. The aliveness. And here's an example of danger producing aliveness and becoming addictive. If you take soldiers into battle, they produce huge amounts of dopamine, huge. And they're literally like taking cocaine. And then when they go away from the battle, they become massively depressed and suicidal, and they want to go back into battle. So you have, these guys who, and I work with vets, many of them that I've worked with at least, will say, when I'm there, I feel the camaraderie and the guys around me, but the danger. But then we come home from driving in our cars that day. We come back to the camp. They play loud music. They drink massive amounts of caffeine to try to bump their dopamine back up because they're addicted to the high dopamine levels. Now, it's simple to look at addiction in terms of cocaine. Everybody understands cocaine. It makes you feel really alive, and that stimulates dopamine in the brain. High levels of dopamine in the brain desensitize neurons so that now in order to feel alive, you need to have high stimulation. See, it's all dependence. But when you depend on danger to feel alive, then you need more and more danger, because each time you go to higher levels of danger, your dopamine receptors, they're like little flowers, they close down. And now to feel alive, you have to have that high dopamine hit, or you end up there with the dopamine levels close, you feel not alive. You often want to die. You feel gloomy. You feel despair. You feel upset. You feel flat. You feel bored. You feel empty. Different people feel different things when you go off of an addiction. We all know that's called the withdrawal symptom. So when you stop focusing on putting yourself in situations where there's danger, and now there's peace, you feel bored. You feel hopeless. You feel despair. And that's why so many vets end up being homeless. They're not motivated. They have no motivation. They have no aliveness, or they come back, and if you don't help them heal that, then they want to go back into the danger. And I remember explaining this to the military. They invited me to teach all the wives of military generals and high level people. And I explained this to them, and I told them, this is how you can heal this. And they say, well, if you heal this, they don't want to go back into battle. I go, who wants to go back into battle?
Correct. That's right.
So they weren't interested in healing.
But it's interesting how you're making the connection between like the release of dopamine and having a need, and that we put a name to that need as opposed to love. We need love. We'll say we need you, instead of saying I need excitement in my life and creating that excitement somewhere else. We get attached to the battle, or we get attached to whatever it is that we perceive as releasing that dopamine. So
yes, we feel I need it. I need it.
I need it. And so you're talking about shifting. You're talking about, you have an emotion, you allow that emotion to pass. Now it's time to shift into being productive, being responsible, being, a viable part of society. Does that not release any dopamine in us to feel that we're being responsible and being a part of society?
It produces much less. Think about, if we look back on our past, it's easy to remember that speeding ticket you got. Yeah. It's easy to remember that F you got on a test. It's easy to remember that big loss. The brain prioritizes maybe about 10 times more. That's an abstract concept, but it's a lot. The brain prioritizes negativity over positivity. Because think about, and this is the brain, not the front part of the brain. This is the back part. Most of our brain has the DNA of a monkey. Now that's the part of us, that's the foundation for us to grow emotionally and spiritually. You need to respect that part of us. And that part of us, its whole purpose is survival. Yeah. So, if I burned my finger the other day, it's healing all by itself. Who does that? I don't do that. This is just the brain doing its thing. That's right. Billions of things are going on in our brain, trillions that we don't have anything to do with. And one of those things that the brain is doing is prioritizing survival. And survival has to keep the whole thing going. And so in order to survive, if something negative happens, you better remember that so that you can avoid that in the future. So it gives you a reward. It gives dopamine. It also gives you a reward for eating. Eating produces dopamine. That's why people who get addicted to eating, they eat too much. So then there's sex. So eating and sex are two primary addictions that we can have. The brain just goes to that. It produces high levels of dopamine. Now, what frees men, okay, this is a very interesting topic. I love going into it. What frees men from the addiction to sex. Now, what does the addiction to sex look like? It looks like a man has sex with a woman, then wants another woman and another woman and another woman. That's what monkeys do. They don't discern between who's my married partner. The monkey just wants to go after. And so there's all these books written on men are biologically wired to be polygamous. I go, no, they're not. Just like men are not biologically wired to go around killing people and stealing. That's not who we are. We are higher beings in a monkey body. We're a spirit, we come into this incarnation and we have to use the front part of our brain, which only occurs. We can only use the front part of our brain when our heart is open and our hormones are in balance. That's proven now. Okay. So that we can see the biological distinction. When men have too many female hormones, women have too many male hormones, then what happens is their cortisol levels go up. When cortisol, as a stress hormone, when the cortisol goes up, blood flow stops to the part of you, which is human. It goes into the part of you, which is just automatic conditioned responses. It's more evolved than a monkey, but the bigger the stress, the further you go back into the automatic processes in the brain. I mean, for someone listening, have they ever had these automatic negative thoughts of doom, thoughts of judgments, thoughts of criticism, thoughts of victimization? You didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. Oh my God, I can remember times with my wife, Bonnie, where she'd look at me disapproving or of something I did, or argue with me, or be hurt by me. And then I would get defensive and feel hurt and all that. And then I walk, you sort of finish that without an argument because you don't want to argue a fight. And so then you walk away, and all day long, your brain is just automatically negative thinking. Yep. She said that, she didn't do that. Why didn't she do that? Well, we can't turn it off. See, we're out of balance. The brain's in a survival mode where it's addicted to focusing on negativity, because negativity is danger, and danger produces dopamine.
There we go again. There we go. Everything leads to dopamine, doesn't it?
Everything leads to dopamine. It's a motivator. It motivates, it causes automatic. And not everything leads to dopamine. There's serotonin. And we're simplifying. There's a lot of other brain chemicals, but these are the ones that really stand out as affecting us a lot. And serotonin is calming. It's peaceful. It's loving. And what we want is a balance of both. So right now I'm producing a tremendous amount of dopamine, but it's not overstimulating my brain because I feel calm, cool, and collected.
Good.
I know what I'm doing. And that balancing of dopamine and serotonin keeps me from being addicted to what I'm doing, as opposed to just doing what I'm doing and having a natural motivation from my spirit. So you're doing this. This is a place for you to help the world. Your spirit is guiding you. So it can't be addiction. Addiction is when you get into this primitive fight or flight part of the brain, and you just basically get addicted to anything that's going to stimulate high dopamine levels. It's literally being able to eat an Oreo cookie and just eat one and happily be satisfied. See, that would be a little dopamine because the sugar produces big amounts of dopamine, but you'd have enough serotonin in your brain. You're not stressed at all. And so that would now calm you down. It would balance the brain chemicals. Ironically, it's serotonin and dopamine are like male and female. It's very interesting. If you have a high dopamine stimulation, then the receptor sites for dopamine begin to close down. Just like if I went out of this room and it was a bright day outside, my pupils would constrict. It's just like that. It's just like, oh, so much stimulation, we can't let it that much in. And now they constrict. And then I go into a dark room and the pupils will slowly begin to open up. Mm-hmm. Serotonin is the brain chemical that opens up those dopamine receptors again. So you're not so dependent on the outer stimulation. So let's say you have a negative reaction to something. You can then feel the negative reaction. And then this is the pathway. By feeling the negative reaction, your brain can begin to sort it out and go, do I want to hold on to this or not? So you have to feel it. And feeling, if we go a little deeper into this, feeling means this is something that's me. So I have control over it. If it's an experience, it's outside of me. But if I can feel it, it's like I can feel my hands, so I can move my hands. Okay. Mm-hmm. I can hold this mouse and I feel it. I can let go of it. Mm-hmm. So if I feel negativity, I now have at least the potential to let it go. but I have to feel it with the intention to let it go and have a procedure through which you can let it go. That's my feeling letter exercise. I've written whole books on a variety of different exercises, and many other people teach similar things, which can help you to feel your emotions and let them go with forgiveness, with understanding, with compassion, with love, with self-esteem, with peacefulness, with confidence. See, this is bringing that negative emotion, feeling it. So now I have control over it, and then analyzing it, reflecting on what am I feeling? And all you have to do is just understand what it is that I'm feeling. And the brain will have the ability, and not just what it is I'm feeling, but and why am I feeling it? Okay, that's the key thing. Because like when I'm grieving the loss of my wife, I'm feeling I'll never have love again. And my brain can go, oh, well, if she's not available, you can find it somewhere else. Now, it doesn't think all that. It just automatically does it because we are intelligent beings.
Yes.
This higher self is intelligent. The intelligence is there if we allow it to reflect on itself. So I have to become aware of what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling that way, and then go deeper. You see, if I'm angry, I have to ask myself, why am I feeling angry? Well, you did this, you did this, you did this. All right, but that's not why it's upsetting to you. So what if they did that? Somebody comes and shoots me the finger. Why does that bother me? What's the big deal? Well, my wife gets upset with me. Why does that bother me? It bothers me because I need her love. She's love, right? So now if she's not loving me, I can't get what I need. So I'm angry. That's the first part of why I'm angry with her. And I don't like that. I like it when she loves me. So then, but why is that painful? Why is that causing, unhappiness in me? Because the deeper level of it is because I'm disappointed and I'm sad. I don't have what I need. So suddenly, anytime you're angry, there's also sadness. Now, why is sadness painful as opposed to just a wave of, oh, disappointment, I didn't get what I wanted today? Well, I'll go off and be happy again. We get stuck in a negative emotion. We feel sadness. Anytime you're stuck in sadness, as opposed to just feeling it and letting it go. You stay sad, I'm so sad. Well, underneath sadness is fear. Anytime, if I didn't get what I wanted, well, why is that a problem? I'll go out and get it tomorrow. Well, no, you can't go out and get it tomorrow. That's the mind telling the monkey brain going, no, I need that person. I can't go get it tomorrow. So what's the emotion there that you need to go deeper into? It's the fear. You need to feel afraid I can't get it tomorrow. Afraid I'll never get love. No one will ever love me. And suddenly what that does, as far as grieving for my wife, if we look at that as an example, and this is true with anything that upsets you, it brings me back to, well, my conscious mind knows that people can find love again. I'm a grown up and whatever. It brings me back to when I was a child. The child part of my brain has all these fears and insecurities, and everybody has this. They're just not aware of it until they get triggered. That it's afraid, well, maybe will people like me? Will people not like me? Am I good enough? Do I not get good enough? I didn't make all good grades. These kids didn't want to be with me. They're bigger than me. I didn't do well. Oh, I missed the catch. They were pitching me the ball. My team lost. It's all my fault. All these kinds of things children think, okay? And then we just let it pass. It just gets buried, but it's buried as tension in our body. It's there. And as soon as we get triggered like a big loss, now I'm grieving, I'm feeling really sad, now I'm afraid. And it's hard for me to feel fear because I know after you grieve, you find love again. See, so intellectually in present time, it was hard for me even to feel my fear. So I had to link it to when I was a child feeling, oh my God, I was abandoned by my mother by mistake one time for 7 days. And so I thought I'd never see her again. That was very, very traumatic to me. So that's where all this deeper fear was coming. So you have to find all those 3 levels of feeling. Then you go even deeper to feelings of guilt. Now that's really hard for some people to get to. For me, it was the first time I really felt like I hated myself. Okay. And even when I was feeling, I was going, wow, this is amazing. I'm getting down to deep feelings I've never had in my life because I have really high self-esteem. So I never really hate myself. I hear people hating themselves. I never could relate to that. And some people can't. But this brought me all the way down to this deep, deep part of me, which felt unworthy of love. Now, where does that come from? So then I processed that and that feeling of unworthiness, which keeps us all from having more in our lives. Okay, so we're not really open to receiving more. The feeling of unworthiness I see now in everybody all the time because I found it deep inside of me. And the unworthiness comes as you come out into this world with your heart open, full of light and love. We're all the divine babies, divine child inside. We all come from heaven. So that light is coming. So people who come in with our radius, always they see a baby and they just go, oh, how cute, how beautiful. You make me so happy. And particularly women, when they see a baby, they just overjoyed. There's this huge feeling of feeling loved and protected and safe. That's all a mother wants to do. So when I come into this world, my first experience is I make people happy and people do stuff for me. So then on that day when mom and dad are arguing and fighting and they're not happy, I feel like, what did I do wrong? So what we don't realize is all the time things don't happen. We feel like, what did I do wrong? And that's called taking things personally. Somebody says something, we react because what did I do wrong? And then we want to say, but I didn't do anything wrong. And that's just the confusion a child has, is why I don't understand. Why are people saying that to me? Why do people do that? A million women have asked me, why did he not call back? Why did he ghost me? This is trigger that gets inside. I can't believe it. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? You did nothing wrong. Or you could have done something. You didn't do nothing. It's like you go into this trauma of a child, not understanding why people aren't giving things to me, why people aren't loving me. And then we start to conclude something's wrong with me. Yes. And then that's called low self-esteem.
And so anyway, that low self-esteem,
we went down through what I want to do a little quick conclusion of what that was. That was an explanation of one of 50 that you'd find in my books of how to go through anger, sadness, or disappointment, fear, and guilt. Now, by writing out, what you do is to break the addiction to negativity, which we didn't fully get into, and I'll come back to it. Mm-hmm. But this is, once you have negativity, how do you let it go? You have to take the time to write out all those negative emotions inside of you. And after you work through the 4, even if you can do 2 or 3 in the beginning, that will give you the release you need. Then you get in touch with, what do I want? What do I wish? What do I need? This is called self-exploration. This is the teaching everywhere in the universe, where in the world, people teach is know thyself, know thyself. Okay, what's going on inside of me? Why am I reacting this way? And all of these reactions, negative emotional reactions, are all what we might call manipulations from the monkey brain. You see, if the monkey brain goes, if you're not giving me what I want, I'll use anger to intimidate you to do it. I'll punish you. I'll scare you. It will also use sympathy to get what you want. Oh, I'm so sad. Please help me. I can't do it myself. Fear is powerlessness. I need someone to help me and do things for me. Feeling guilt. Feeling guilt is helping people to believe in you again. If you feel guilt, then people will, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so bad. I'm so bad. Then people will trust you again. Mm-hmm. So they're all ways to change the outer world. Anytime you use a negative emotion to change the outer world, what did your brain learn? Your brain learns, if I want to change the outer world, I have to use these negative emotions. And here's what, if you look at a monkey, for example, a real simple example, a monkey has no communication skills, right? So this is the primitive part of our brain. It communicates through emotion. So I step on your foot and you go, ow. And I step on your foot again. How do you communicate? You go, ow, ow. And then you go, ow, ow, louder and louder and louder and more upset, more and more. This is how the monkey brain functions. And what we want to do is free ourselves from being controlled by the monkey brain, but at the same time, not kill the monkey brain. We don't want to ever negate negative emotions. They're a part of who we are. Mm-hmm. They're telling us, I believe they're the messages of the soul to say, there's something off in your thinking. You need to correct it. You need to update it. You need to adjust it. It's kind of like, I thought I was going to make this much money and I didn't make it. And I kind of go, okay, well, maybe next time I can make that money. That's an adjustment. That's a pivot. Yeah. The brain has to pivot, and the brain tends to only pivot if it's the monkey brain controlling you, if it feels pain. And that feeling of pain motivates people. It's called bottoming out. Pain gets you going, but it doesn't have to be so great. It's negative emotions are different experiences of pain. There's physical pain, and then there's emotional pain. And another perspective on this is all physical pain that lasts a long time can be chronic pain is actually chronic emotions that are stuffed in your subconscious mind. And so we want to be able to unleash that and then transform that. And that's called giving up addictions. Not all of them at once, but when you give up an addiction, what happens is it's like you go through withdrawal first and lots of negative emotions come up. So you have to learn when you're going through this period, this is to celebrate. Okay, I gave up this addiction so I can now get in touch with what I've been pushing down by having the addiction. Okay, which is
the addiction produces that dopamine that keeps you from shifting, that keeps you stuck in there, right?
Yes. Let me give you another example of what dopamine does in the brain. It causes suppression of what your emotions are, your deep emotions. Like, see, let's say we're talking about victimization today. If
Yes.
I'm blaming you, victimization is blaming somebody else. What it's helping me to do is avoid feeling it's my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. Okay. And why do people want to avoid the responsibility? It's back to that child going, I don't know what I did. I don't know what I did. And if you don't know what you did, you'll hold on to negativity, blame. You'll hold on to blame because we got to solve the problem. The brain has to find a solution. To find a solution, you got to see what the problem is. But if you're unable to feel that you're part of the problem, then you're stuck in blaming the other person. This is, in my book, probably the most powerful of all my books that explain emotional processing is the book Mars and Venus Starting Over. Because usually at the end of a relationship or a death, you get triggered for the deepest feelings you have. And so I teach all these processes, which all are different ways of processing anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. I mean, ironically, a lot of the emotional trauma that people carry around isn't even their own. They picked it up from their mother. Or their father. It's once I cleared out all my stuff, then suddenly I had to do my parents' stuff, and I had to do my mother's stuff, my father's stuff. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. I do a workshop and we work on all this clearing and figuring out and how to take responsibility, because here's the thing, responsibility has a bum rap. It's fault, blame, shame, duty. And the reality is it's ownership. It's taking ownership for everything. And if everything is your creation or co-creator with the divine, then you can uncreate it. That's the beauty of taking ownership. But some people can't get out of there. And when you had mentioned to me the last time we spoke, that's because the victimization now that creates the dopamine, and they keep repeating that and finding different ways where they're not having to take that ownership for their life.
And let's say why the highly intelligent brain, which is about survival, is going to suppress ownership. Let's say it suppresses ownership. Ownership is guilt in the monkey brain. Now, in the enlightened brain, ownership is, I can do it differently. Okay. It doesn't have any guilt associated with it. But in the monkey brain, ownership, the child brain basically goes, okay, I'm afraid I won't get love. What did I do wrong? I must be bad. I don't know what I did, but I must be bad. Okay, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve more. I guess I don't deserve all that love. I guess I'm not good enough to achieve that. I guess something's wrong with me. People just don't like me. So that is what the child feels. And that's massively painful because that means you'll never get what you need. So that's very dangerous. Now, it's also massively painful. So what the brain does is it suppresses those feelings, and dopamine suppresses those feelings. Now, why would the brain do that? Besides, dopamine is a motivator, but also dopamine is a chemical in the brain that disconnects painful memories from the present time. And that's if you're a soldier in battle and you see somebody die, you can't just sit there and go, oh my God, I could die. No, you have to push those feelings away and become fearless and keep going into battle. You can't just sit and feel when you're in danger. You've got to take action. So what the brain does is
that adrenaline too? Is that adrenaline too?
Adrenaline is the early stage of cortisol.
Okay.
There are two major stress hormones. Adrenaline does that, yes. And then cortisol keeps it down forever. Okay, so for a long time, or longer time, we'll put it that way. Adrenaline, ironically, it's the beginning stress hormone. You feel you're in danger, but you have some confidence. Okay. So like some dangerous thing, some problem happens, I get all adrenaline pumps up. Okay, I got to do something about it. And I have a certain level of confidence I can do something about it.
Mhm.
Then I realize, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't get the result I want. And I lose my confidence. Now your body starts making cortisol. And the
Mm.
problem with cortisol is cortisol doesn't go away very quickly. Adrenaline for men particularly goes away by using your muscles. It's like your brain goes, okay, as long as you're running and fighting, you're okay. But if you stop running and fighting, then your adrenaline basically releases cortisol. That's why we're in a chronically stressed environment today, is that men don't run around solving problems. The healthier people, the ones who are out there using their bodies, but the ones sitting in front of computers now are getting overweight and they're having all these problems. They got ADHD. It's just, they're not healthy anymore because we don't use our muscles when we're in a state of stress. We look at boys with ADHD, all you have to do in many cases is give them a lot of recess. And that's what they've done, is they've taken away sports and schools. Those kids need to be throwing balls and interacting and running around. And what girls need is they can do that. But what that does is that helps get rid of adrenaline. But the problem is it doesn't go away completely, because when you're using your muscles, you're using testosterone and you're not making estrogen. And estrogen, what's going to lower her stress. So you can literally physiologically burn off adrenaline with muscles. But if you're a woman and you primarily go out and jog, you see some of these women are overweight, they want to lose weight. They're just look like they're dying, they're fighting a battle. They're making testosterone and they're using their muscles. It feels good because the adrenaline is being processed. But then when they're done, their estrogen levels are very low and now they're stressed again. And so they can get addicted to that feel good experience of going over there.
And it's like a vicious cycle, John. It's a vicious cycle. So how do you encourage someone to get out of that victimization? Because if a woman wants to stop being a victim, and let's say they go back to the gym, it's producing testosterone, it's lowering their estrogen. It's like, okay, that's not what we want. We want to increase our estrogen, feel empowered. We want to do all that, which could also increase our testosterone. So how do we logically say, acknowledge I'm a victim, I'm addicted to being a victim, which, I think that I want to encourage people.
If you have automatic negative thoughts, okay,
okay.
I get it. It's just, I'm not having to take, now this was proven, by the way, this is why I use this concept, because I was speaking at a grieving conference and the scientists were presenting the information that at UCLA, they did brain scans of people who are chronically grieving. These are people who, this is 2 years later after Bonnie died, and I experienced more love than I've ever felt in my life. And I have more tears that come up and down, but they're not suffering. It's a tenderness of love, and I'm processing through it. It always brings me back to more love. I've had people rip me off of millions of dollars. I had a lawyer handing my money, all went away at one point. I processed it and now I'm making more money again. So life is good. And then things happen and we have to process it and then life gets better. That's for the people who succeed in life. Some don't. And because they get stuck.
Life gets better. Right there, life gets better. So whatever you're going through, you deal with it and then life gets better. That life gets better keeps that part of understanding life get better, keeps us in that victimization, right?
The belief that life doesn't get better is and not just the beliefs are formed by experience. Okay. So you have to actually experience that your life gets better after a loss. And many people, their life doesn't get better after a loss. It gets worse, because I believe the outer world is our friend to trigger what we're not looking at within ourselves. That's more of a metaphysical, spiritual concept, but it's been my experience and I'll tell you just the experience of that. I remember one day I was just sort of putting a lid on a lot of feelings. And, we all have those days that are very stressful and you just sort of pushing it down. If you're a parent, you'll see that your children will act out at those times. They always act out at those times, forcing you to feel what you feel. But this experience where I first realized this, because there's a lot of my own personal journey sharing my experiences, and it does equate with a lot of things that are taught out in the world. And So I was feeling really stressed. And that day I just felt an urge. This is back when I'm promoting myself, writing out my pamphlets, going and having them copied, putting them up on grocery stores, back in the days, starting out. This is 45 years ago. And, and that day, the moment I walked I was just about to walk into the door of a Kinko's or whatever it was to get these pamphlets made. 2 cars collided straight on.
Ooh.
It was the biggest crash I could ever, the noise, the intensity, the crash was unbelievable. And suddenly I felt so good emotionally. All my emotions were released. See, that experience out there mirrored what I was feeling. I was drawn to a situation of drama to sort of express the drama that was inside of me. And it felt good. Although I didn't feel good about the people and it been
yes,
but my karma was good enough that I didn't have to be in that car myself. Yeah. But I realized that the outer world tends to reflect our inner world. And if you start looking at your life and realizing you can't always know what you're putting out, but much of the time you'll get the same situations. We call these patterns. Certain people have issues to work on and they'll keep producing the same pattern until that issue doesn't trigger negativity, but triggers a sense of self-love, our forgiveness, our empathy. These are the things we're here to learn. And part of why we can't acknowledge, coming back to that responsibility, is we don't love ourselves in order to say, hey, it's my fault, but I still deserve to be loved. It's my mistake. It's because as a child, you don't know what your mistake is. And so you just assume you're not good enough. And that's so painful. So painful, your brain then makes dopamine to repress those feelings. Remember I mentioned dopamine represses emotions until you have enough serotonin, which means you feel safe. And then when you feel safe, the serotonin is like the opposite of dopamine. It's calming. Dopamine is danger. Okay. So aliveness, and the other one is peacefulness. So when things get really safe, then suddenly what can happen is there's no danger. So dopamine levels start coming back down again. So when your dopamine is addicted to going high, if you have a lot of safety, then dopamine can start learning to come down, and we can start healing the brain through feeling safe. But in that process of feeling safe, now the dopamine goes down. And what was the function of dopamine? To repress those negative emotions. So when your dopamine goes down because safety has arrived, the negative emotions, which have been repressed through dopamine, come back up. Okay. And so this is where we have to process our feelings. So it's a battle back and forth of you fall in love. And this is what happens to people when they fall in love. They feel so safe. They have all those little childlike feelings. I mean, I love you, honey, sweetheart. Oh, you're so beautiful. I want to live my life with you. I'll never love anybody else. You're the most important. I'll never stop loving you. This is what children feel, that we need that assurance. And I'm not minimizing that. Those are romantic feelings. That's what all the romantic songs are about. I can't live without you. Well, that's a child. I can't live without you. I depend on you totally.
Right.
Okay. So these are awakening, bringing consciousness, bringing light into the primitive part of our brain. That's a good thing. You see that, then you can consciously heal yourself. Who knows what we can do when we can actually integrate light into all parts of our brain. But what happens is we lose that light if our hormones are not in balance. And for women, it's to generate that the emotions will come up. And for men, the emotions will come up. When the emotions come up, I've been building up this conversation to make the point of your show.
Yes.
Which is addiction to complaining, to victimization. When those negative emotions come up, all right, now the conscious mind sees these negative emotions. It also gets pleasure from that, or aliveness, we might say. They've come up. What do you do with them? If you use them to get what you want, you reinforce the primitive pathways in your brain to control, so that whenever you want more, your brain looks for reasons to complain. See, we always want more as part of life, natural, wanting more, needing more, whatever, whenever you need or feel, I wish, I want. That's a motivation in your life from inside. Now, the negative emotions come up and you say, oh, I'm so angry. I'm going to go tell you how angry I am so you'll change. Or I'm feeling sad. I'm going to go tell you how sad I am so that you'll feel sorry and apologize to me. Or I'm so afraid. I feel those feelings. I'm so afraid. I don't trust you. So I'm going to pull back and I'm not going to open my heart to you. So when we buy into our negative emotions and then use them to control your behavior or control my behavior, now they become tools. And that grows neural connectors in your brain. So that every time you start wanting more in the world, because we do want more in the world, your brain basically has a pathway to use negativity. And to use negativity, your brain has to go, okay, what can I be upset about? What can I have the right to feel? This whole thing, I have a right to be angry. Certainly you have a right to feel whatever you want, but it's the justification.
That makes you feel worse. I mean,
it does. How does it, but it doesn't, on one level, it doesn't make you feel worse. I mean, how many times have people been marching around going, we're victims, they're all happy to do it. Okay, but it puts your body in a stress mode and it doesn't allow you to feel love and peace and openness. But it is this feeling of aliveness that we get addicted to. And I first got that awareness that actually they've measured this. This is why I can talk so much about it. Otherwise, you say victimization's an addiction. People go, what? Well, they found that in parents who are chronically grieving, they don't go from crying to feeling good again, and finally the pain goes away. Okay, it's healed. That's called healing. So many people say it never goes away. It never goes away. It never goes away. It doesn't go away. The pain, the suffering goes away. The love increases. The joy increases. And you're not happy that they died. You're happy that you spent that time with them. It's like going on an amazing vacation. You just go, wow, that was such a great vacation. You always think about that. That was so sweet and wonderful without any tinge of pain. That's healing. When I was a little boy, I fell out of a tree 2 stories and broke both my arms. Bones were sticking out. Okay. So what I did after that, they reset the bones and the bones grew back stronger. The bone, when you're young, at least, they grow back stronger. And so you actually have bigger bones because of that. At the same time, that example is very interesting. You think, oh my God, the kid fell out of a tree head first. His arms are broken. He must have been in so much pain. No pain at all. Why? Because it was so dangerous. My brain produces morphine, okay, and numbed me out. That's called shock. I was in shock, so I didn't even feel the pain of it. See, the body protects you from pain by suppressing it. Dopamine suppresses negative emotions. Morphine suppresses just pain in your body. A lot of people, when they get shot, they don't feel pain at all because the pain is so great. The brain just produces morphine or endorphins to numb the pain. And this is just denial. It's pushing everything down, which is a survival mechanism. So you see how the brain will do this.
Mind is so powerful. It is so powerful. And we can use it to our advantage to help us heal. I know that we have the podcast. We're about to end the podcast in a few minutes, John, and I do want to talk about how to get out of it, consciously get out it.
I built the foundation. Here it is. First of all, they did MRI scans and they saw that grieving parents who chronically grieving were feeling guilty and awful or blaming, whichever. The part of the brain that lights up when they're taking cocaine lit up. So there we have evidence. Okay, this is what it's all at the different degrees. So what the solution is, and I went to this whole thing about the emotional map. When something upsets you, don't use that upset to change anybody or to change your own behavior. It's to go into a state of, now I need self-awareness of what's going on. My job is to transform these negative emotions back into love. And if you do this process, you process your emotions. Mine is go through your negative emotions, express freely what you wish and want. Then imagine that person giving you what you wish and want. Give yourself these positive messages. Write a letter to yourself from your mother, your father, from your spouse. Don't give it to them. This is all you're doing inside of your own self, giving yourself what you would want if that person would do everything you want and truly feel it. And then look at how would that make me feel? And now what you've just done in that process, you're growing these neurotransmitters, bringing you back from anger to sadness and fear, all the way back to what I really want, what does my soul want? To love, be loved, forgive, all that, understand, and self-esteem and feeling good. So what you're doing is creating a process where you go from, I have negative thoughts. How quickly can I get back to my positive feelings authentically without having to deny them? This gradually over time, that process of coming back to love produces serotonin. And what serotonin does is it upregulates the dopamine receptor sites. So now you're not dependent on high dopamine stimulation to feel alive. Normal stimulation will make you feel alive. And normal stimulation is the world's not going to doom and gloom. Normal stimulation is everything's pretty much okay and I'm in a good place and we can have a good day. That's work. You have to do the work. I've been doing it for 50 years. Okay. Something upsets me. I don't blame out. I come in and process my blame out feelings without using them. And what happens is for women, particularly because it's a big estrogen stimulator and you're low in estrogen today, because you're more on your male side, a big estrogen stimulator for women is complaining. It feels good, but it just keeps going more and more. And your brain now uses complaining and feeling upset and disappointed and dissatisfied in order to get what you want. Stop complaining. Go 6 months, even do 30 days. Try it. Not uttering a negative thing. Don't utter a negative symptom of your body, like, oh, I feel bloated today or I feel bad today. Don't even utter anything that's negative for 30 days. Later on, you can say, this isn't working for me. This isn't working for me, but you won't be addicted to it. To free yourself of the addiction, you have to abstain. Just like if you took cocaine, you have to stop taking cocaine so your brain can now reorganize itself. And processing emotions is it's so powerful, even to get rid of a cocaine addiction. It's just people don't know how to process emotions.
Yes, yes. Okay, so before we go, I want to encourage all of you. That's a great challenge, John. I want to hold you guys up to that. Also, I am doing, I want you guys to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Please subscribe so that you know when we have your favorite guest or favorite teachers in the classroom. And so while there, make sure you like and follow and subscribe to my BitChute channel as well. Now, this is a thing that's going on. I have started a workshop called I Am the Solution. I Am the Solution, New Truth Series, I Am the Solution. We talk about this. I talk about John, that moment when I realized that, you can be addicted to being a victim. There's so many people out in this world that just continue to be victimized. If that is you, please feel free to join us. February 5th, 6th, and 7th, we're going to be doing the I Am the Solution. Now, the I Am is our higher power. The solution is the acronym to get us to that responsible life that we all want to live. And so I want to acknowledge that. And then, of course, there's other things going on. Sponsors, please take care of our sponsors the way that they're sponsoring supporting the classroom. So all of that, please go to whenyouneedafriend.com, explore, and please consider being part of the I Am the Solution 5th, 6th, and 7th of February. John, this is great. I love how you explain things in a way where now we understand this is how our brain works. This is how our brain operates. We've got 2 minutes left for our podcast. If you have time afterwards, because I know there was a time confusion there. If you have some time, I'd love to go into a little bit more steps on the different things that we can do to get out of it. But if somebody were to walk in today, just right now, these last 2 minutes in the classroom, and they want to learn like a crash course, elevator speech of getting out of victimization mode, what would you say?
Well, I'd say you have to learn how to process negative emotions rather than use negative emotions to get what you want. If ever you use negative emotions to get what you want, you're growing pathways in your brain so that whenever you want more, your brain goes to what's wrong with my life and how do I and communicating it. So you have more and more negative thoughts, automatic reactions. You want to free that from automatic to choosing, to responding with love and openness. And you have to go through withdrawal. You have to stop taking the drug because that negativity, we already know it's automatic, keeps happening. That's because you're addicted to it. It produces dopamine. Stop it and then use those emotions. Don't suppress those emotions. Don't eat them away. Don't exercise them away, but process them. Journal out those feelings or talk to a therapist. And even that's tricky because some people just talk to a therapist to reinforce their victimness.
That's right.
You're taking responsibility by writing it out each time, coming back to I am capable of feeling love and happiness and joy without changing the outer world. When you can find goodness inside yourself without changing the outer world will change for you.
That's right. Yeah, because you see what you are. You see in others who you are. I love this conversation. I want you back in the classroom as quickly as possible because, these are different ways that we can become what I call once you graduate from the I Am the Solution, you become a self-cleaning oven. You start looking at yourself, you're looking at your life without having to fix the exterior. You can fix the interior by dealing with past traumas, all of that. So please consider joining us on February 5th, 6th, and 7th. John, if you have time, I'd love to go into this, how to suppress, how people suppress these emotions and how to get out of that suppression if you have the time. And
Yes.
so thank you so much, John, for being in the classroom today. It's so awakening to hear you explain these things. So thank you. So remember, go to marsvenus.com and we're going to continue the teacher's pet and answer your questions. Please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. John Gray wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, this is, it's like you get this anatomy lesson as well as an emotional lesson, as well as activate your button, activate your responsibility. I want to tell all of you that if you go to whenyouneedafriend.com, I have a page called 100% responsibility. And when you look at responsibility, again, you have to look at it as empowerment and freedom. Many people look at it as blame, shame, fault, or duty. And that's where responsibility takes a bum rap. So if we start embracing responsibility in a totally different way, which we discussed in the I Am the Solution workshop, if you start looking at responsibility in a totally different way, it is freeing. And you will get out of that addiction to being a victim. So we have some questions, John. How much time do you have? Because I know that we had a communication issue with
I have to do something in 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So let's do
Okay.
10 minutes. So if you guys have questions, make
Okay.
sure you type in a queue, and I'm going to look down to see anybody that has a question. Just type in a queue. Let me scroll down. Lots of positive feedback. I don't have time to, because I want to answer any of your questions. Okay. So Allie says, awesome information. Are there any peculiarities, I can't even say that word, peculiar, related to narcissist, perverts or manipulators, and how to deal with them? So I guess the question is, how do you deal with your victimization people in your life, the narcissists, the perverts, the people that are constantly trying to purposely make you feel bad because they feel worse?
Well, you have to realize, why do you attract these people in your life? Okay, it's back to the child, which is being mistreated and going, I don't understand why why I have this happen. So that's a pattern in your life if you have those people in your life. And it's not that it's bad, it's that has to do with your life lessons. Okay, so we don't want to judge ourselves for the people and the situations we've created in our life. We have to realize that they are the triggers to help us learn our life lessons. And as we learn our life lessons through those interactions, we break the pattern. And it doesn't happen necessarily overnight. Okay, each time it might happen, but each time you more quickly come back to being able to recognize, for example, a narcissist, not to try to please a narcissist. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist, for example, and I want to just caution that often people are not a narcissist. What is that? There's a million degrees of narcissism. Yes. Okay. So it's just like to write somebody off as a narcissist. It could be a selfish person who just doesn't understand how to give love. And by getting love, they can transform. And some people don't transform. Okay. So there's a wide range. I don't like to label people, but you find yourself with somebody who constantly just thinks of themselves and not you. And why did you fall in love with them? Okay. That's what's the issue there? It keeps happening.
It all falls back on us, right?
It all falls back on us. And what you have to realize is you get to justify why that relationship failed because they're all this, this, and this. And why do you need to justify that relationship failed? Blame somebody else because you don't know what you did to contribute to that. You're back to those childhood feelings. So now the solution is twofold here, because learning life lessons is different from healing the past. The first thing is you got to heal. That gives you greater wisdom. But then you have to open up to greater wisdom, and you need often to be triggered for that, or you have to find it or find teachers to help awaken that inside of you. So I want to explain what Mars Venus is. When I wrote Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus, it's so powerful because it changes your life without having to do any healing. It gives you the answer book of how you made mistakes without judging you. It gives you the answer book of why you made mistakes without any self-judgment. So people go, men hear that and they go, oh, I realize now, God, I've been doing the wrong thing because I'm not from Venus. I just didn't know. Okay, so there's no shame and guilt. And women go, oh my God, man, I always thought men were like not loving me, not supporting. He's just in his cave and it was just my mistake. How do I understand a man? So I gave people a free pass for making all these common mistakes so they could then look at themselves and have the mistake. But more importantly, they could look at themselves and see that they weren't doing it right. You feel like a victim when you think you were doing everything right and bad was done to you. And it's like, no, we have to be responsible. So a real great story to back up everything you teach, which is similar to what I teach, is when I was in fifth grade, my fifth grade teacher had an answer book to the math problems. And I saw her grading the problems with this. The solution was always in red. And I went, wow, there's a book with all the answers. And I went to my mother and I said, Mom, I want the math book with the answers in it. And she said, well, that you have to do the problems yourself. And the teacher grades it. And I said, yeah, but why do I have to get an F because I made something wrong? If I get the answer book, I can look at my answer. I can correct it right away. I can correct it. I never get an F. And she said, okay. So I had the answer book and I was great at math as a result of that. And it's amazing. They have the answer. My daughter, Lauren, she hated math, felt she couldn't do it. And I did her homework for her, with her every night for 6 years or 7 years. Then in college, she had the highest calculus classes.
Wow.
It was like, we don't have to withhold the answers. But when children, when adults and relationships, when problems go wrong, if you don't have the answer book, then you think it's always the other person's fault. Because we're always doing our best, because particularly you love somebody, but then the monkey brain comes in. When you don't have wisdom and understanding of what's the right way, you tend to blame your partner when things go right, because you feel you're doing the right thing. How many men will say, John, the reason I want to end this marriage is because no matter what I do, it never works. She's never happy. So he doesn't realize what he's doing isn't what works. And she goes, I give and I give and I give. I don't get back. I feel like such a victim. And I go, no, you're giving the wrong stuff. That's not what men need. And so you're over giving, which means you're going to feel resentment. Your heart's going to close and he's going to shut down. So we just understand the dynamics, the plumbing between men and women. Then you realize if it's a jam, it's you and it's them too. But you have no ability to change them. You can only change yourself. A big lesson for us for us humans to learn.
True, absolutely true. And expectations, I think, is the number one killer of relationships. I think if you sit down with a person and say, this is what my expectation is, and the other person goes, well, that wasn't what I was thinking, or, that conversation can save, a relationship, that expectation conversation.
Absolutely. What I used to do with Bonnie, we go on a vacation. I say, okay, honey, what's your expectation? What's your plan? What's this going to look like? Let's discuss give me some information of what I'm supposed to do. And I can give you information what I can't do. So, but we don't want to say expectations are wrong. You didn't say that, but it could be heard like that.
Yes,
no, we need to explore and be aware of what our expectations are. And when our expectations are not met, we need to pivot without blaming somebody else, but recognize, okay, let's find another way. There's always another way. Pivot to another solution as it gets stuck into, no, you said it. I'm not going to change it. You already said it. You did it. You can't take it back. This is like, why not?
Yeah. Well, the expectation is, let's say we're going on vacation and my expectation is to relax, to veg out. And your expectation is to mountain climb, explore, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, when you get on your vacation, it's World War III, because its expectations were not met. So it's always good to say, it's just simple, just like, what are your expectations and what would you like? How can I support it? It's so good. We have another question from Camilla.
A quick obstacle that women put up to that conversation is they don't tell you, because they feel like if you love me, you would know what to do. And it's a test. They're testing out, can I trust you? Can I trust you? And so everything becomes this big test. And that's more of a female thing, not that men can't do it, but it is very common.
Yeah.
And that means she needs to look at when she's not trusting. Anytime you're not trusting, then what you're afraid of, and realize what you're afraid of goes back to your past again and process it.
It's that there are people that must be right about you being wrong. And they are constantly checking those lists, oh, there you go again. Because in order for me to not change, I must prove that you cannot change either.
That's
And
right.
so it's crazy. It's just crazy the way we think. Okay, I have a question here from Camilla. She said, what advice can be given to a teen overwhelmed with school responsibility that is beginning to feel victimized?
Now a child is different. A teen is different from an adult. Their
Okay.
prefrontal cortex, the connection to the divine, isn't fully developed in the logical part of the brain. So it takes about 28 years before that develops. So as a teenager, the mother needs to create a safety for her to talk about these things and to go deeper into it. And as she talks about it, don't give solutions. Don't talk. Let's just to be present with that child and ask questions, help them go deeper into what they're feeling, what they wish, and what they want. And don't feel sorry for your child. That's the most important thing. Whenever you listen to somebody's pain and you feel sorry for them, you emphasize they're getting the dopamine hit of feeling, yes, poor you. Poor you
Yes.
is not a gift to someone, but I understand what you're feeling, and help them articulate that in the best way you can. And you can't do that as an adult, by the way, if you can't do it for yourself. So, basically she needs to start working on her part of her. When you start feeling sorry for your daughter, look at what you feel sorry for in your childhood or in your past or in your life.
Excellent point.
Process it, and your child will have less of it. Because in my first book on emotional processing called What You Feel You Can Heal, one of the beautiful concepts is, as a parent, often what we're pushing down, our children will express out. So literally you're polluting your child with your inability to process your own feelings. And
Wow.
if you want to put that to the side, you can also look at just simply by learning to process your feelings, you'll be able to help her process her feelings. And she will automatically go through them because you can go through them. Children gain knowledge through their parents' experience. They absorb it. It's in the field around the mother to the child will absorb it. There was a study done on actual learning for children who watched Sesame Street. And they watch Sesame Street and you test them, see how much they learned. And then you have the child, same situation, listening to Sesame Street, but the mother is simply sitting next to the child and not saying anything.
Yeah.
And the child scores much, much higher because the child is actually pulling the information from the parent. And that's how we learn so much. We absorb, monkey see, monkey do. We just take it in subconsciously. So if you're processing your own feelings, your children will have less of that drama inside of them. They'll be able to process through it much easier.
What a great image, because I learned that the Sesame Street when my children were younger, and that you should never let a child just sit in front of the television without having that interaction. I thought it was interaction, like, the parent saying, answer the question, or like interacting with the child, not just waiting for the child to respond to the screen, but to absorb the parent's wisdom or knowledge or suppression or whatever. That makes sense. That makes huge sense,
And
because
the study showed that parents say nothing, just sit there and just know 2 + 2 is 4. And the parents going, just agreeing with it inside.
Well, I really do believe that victimization is a learned behavior as well. If you're seeing your parents be victimized, and how, I remember my mom used to say to me, I don't care that everybody else got a C in the classroom. All I care is about you. Oh, I don't care if anybody else doesn't get along with that teacher. I care about you. And my mom would say that to me. And I learned to say that to my kids too. And I never, ever, ever took the side of my child when I was listening to the teacher. And I would listen to what they were trying to teach. And I'd go back and my kids would say, she doesn't like me. She doesn't this. She gave me an F. Did you earn it? And I've never I didn't want my kids to be a victim either.
Yes. So let's look at a distinction I make with the word compassion.
Mm-hmm.
What we want, every human being needs empathy.
Okay.
So I can have empathy for you and not feel sorry for you. That's compassion. That's the higher level. I understand your pain. I've been there. I get it. And there's a context that you're speaking in, knowing that good things come from bad. We all go through these things, but it's not like poor you. But I know what you go through.
Yeah.
And I know it's painful. Yeah, it's painful. It's
acknowledgement, just acknowledging them.
Yeah. Just acknowledge it and hear it. Help them go a little deeper with it. It'd be like a child's crying and you just might just say afterwards, so disappointing. Boom, you identified a feeling, or I understand, so sad. And I bet you're afraid. What are you afraid? What are you afraid of? That will cause them to go a little deeper and go, they hadn't thought that. They don't look at that.
Yeah.
You know, anytime somebody's angry, for example, the only reason they're really angry is they're afraid. But if you say to an angry person, you're so afraid, I'm not afraid. You see, we think we are feeling, this is it, what I'm feeling. Yes. And what's below that? And what's below that? Because whenever you're holding tight to something, that's victimization. I'm a victim. You're not looking at the whole picture. And quite often, you know, deep down inside, the person who's a victim is really, and they're angry at somebody else or blaming somebody else, it's because it's too painful to blame themselves. And that's what they're really addicted to deep down inside, is feeling I'm not good, it's my fault. And it's too painful to go there. But if you hear the other emotions and they feel safe, those feelings will come up in the context of love and empathy, and they will be released.
You know, I created a saying that the brain will neglect. The brain will neglect, but the body won't forget. You know, the body is constantly trying to tell the brain it's okay to process, it's okay to do all this stuff. But the brain is neglecting it and saying, no, it's going to cause pain. I don't know if I'm going to be able to acknowledge it. And then all of a sudden, the body breaks down. It gets pain in the back, or, you know, you get sick, and people don't realize that this is all interconnected. The brain wants to neglect it and the body doesn't want to. And so there's a battle. And if you are watching today and you're feeling dis-ease in any way, shape, or form, it's because there could be something emotionally get trapped in your body. I love how you just flat out say the emotion is trapped in your body.
Yeah.
And how is it going to come out? It manifests in other ways.
It's repressed. It's repressed. That the research shows that the brain remembers things. And if it's too painful, the brain makes a level of dopamine, which is a chemical that disconnects you from that memory, until the brain makes serotonin and calms the dopamine down. You feel peaceful. Those emotions will come up. Yeah. So it's a battle. So to avoid feeling, and just look, to avoid feeling bored, people eat. And boredom is just repressed emotion. It's repressed aliveness. So basically, you know, addiction to eating and addiction to sex. These are our two bottom line addictions. And the addiction to being a victim, it's built into the brain. Okay, we start out that way. We get reinforced by our parents, but it's already in the wiring of the monkey brain. It's just there. And you know, I think we talked about last time, the DNA research that shows that the genes carry the traumas of the parents and their parents and their parents. They've proven this with little animals that have short lives, that the next generation has the same trauma all the way for 7 generations. The trauma is still there.
Yeah. And we've done shows on generational pattern shifters. It's so important that we do the work. And that's why I created the I Am the Solution, the New Truth series, I Am the Solution workshop. It's a weekend virtual workshop. Go to whenyounneedafriend.com, look it out. And also go to marsvenus.com to check out to all the workshops that John does as well. I mean, there are so many different ways, whatever resonates with you. But this weekend that we're doing, it's February 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's amazing how you start on Friday as a stranger in a group, and then by Sunday you're just this huge family supporting one another, cheering each other to make some shifts into your life that will free you and liberate you.
And so John, nothing more powerful than doing it in a group. I just want to reinforce this for everybody. It's so powerful to do it in a group. I would not be the person I am if I hadn't done 10 years of group work like this.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Now, John, you know, we have one more question. I know we're looking at the time clock. And it's Sherry. I think I know how you're going to answer this, and I think it'll be brief. It says, what does the doctor think about drugs, prescriptions, or marijuana to help with this problem? It seems like my doctor always goes straight to the meds when I talk about problems.
Yeah. Well, that's one system. Repress. It doesn't heal.
Yeah. I think it's time. It's time for us to take our life back by looking at these growth opportunities instead of mistakes. We look at them as growth opportunities, and we can set ourselves free. John, I know you need to go. Thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to the next time you join us.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And well, those of you, we'll see you soon. Remember to check out whenyounneedafriend.com and